Rock and roll Chicago, rock and roll Chicago, my hometown. Well, I was born in the city, gonna rock your city, Chicago. Chicago rock and rollers are the best here around.
Hey, this is Paul Martin
And Ray the Roadie.
for the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast. What's up, Ray?
I am feeling quite eclectic today, Paul.
Whoa. You feeling what?
Eclectic.
Electric?
Not electric. It's eclectic.
Oh,
You know what that is? Yes. Eclectic. It's deriving ideas, style, or taste from a broad and diverse range of sources.
So, in other words, you're not quite sure what you're feeling.
Maybe, yeah. It's coming from
You're feeling a bunch of different things. You're feeling a bunch of different things, eh?
Right. I'm feeling a little bit of this, a little bit of that, whatever I feel like. That's what it is.
Okay.
And that's how I'm feeling today. I'm feeling quite eclectic. And you want to know why?
Why is that?
Because we're meeting with Frank Orrall of Poi Dog Pondering, that has to be one of the most eclectic groups out there.
Yes, they are. They're very diverse and very different in every way. I mean, every song seems to be a little bit different than the last.
Definitely.
Every album is different than the last.
And they're all good.
Oh yeah.
And they're all good. It's it takes some artistry and some talent to be able to put that kind of stuff together time and time again.
Well, we talked with Frank, and he said, he kind of draws from whatever he's feeling at the time when he's writing a song. And,
That's right.
And so it could be a bossa nova sound, it could be a rock sound, it could be kind of a Motown soul thing, if that's what he's feeling at the time. Well, let's see what he had to say for himself, and get to our interview with Frank Orrall.
Let's go.
Pondering. Welcome to the show, everybody. Today we've got a special guest, lead vocalist, frontman, founder of Poi Dog Pondering, Frank Orrall. How are you, Frank?
Hey, Frank.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me. Thank you. I'm doing okay. Thanks a lot.
Good. Now, a lot of people have. I know you've kind of made Chicago home for quite some time, but so it being this the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast, we can count you as a Chicago band.
Great. Thank you. We're proud to be counted as such.
But it didn't start there, did it? It started somewhere else, right? It started in Hawaii.
I'm originally from Hawaii. That's where I'm from, and I grew up there, and that's where the band started out.
And how did it get started?
It got started just really. I was with. I'm a drummer. I've always been a drummer. Like since I was like 13, I was drumming in junior high school bands, and then when I was probably around 20 or so, I joined kind of like a punk new wave band in Hawaii called the Squids. They were all older than me, or mostly older, about 10 years older than me. I was probably 18, 19 at the time. And they were all like art students, and they were like they made everything themselves. They made their records, they made the artwork. They did they were like, we're not waiting for a contract. We're doing everything ourselves, So, I mean, I was like a young, just a college kid. I mean, I was playing drums to like meet girls, but I was like surfing the rest of the time and doing badly in school. So when I met these guys, and I love drumming, but like their attention to like what they were doing was really inspiring to me. So then that band was called the Squids. That band only lived for a year, but it really kind of changed my life, And then I got into the idea of writing songs, and I started to use my brother's 4-track recorder, and I started to make these little cassette albums at home. And I would watercolor the cover, and I would sell them on consignment. And my sister worked at a record store, and she would let me put like 3 or 4 on the counter, And that's how I started making records. I mean, I made the first 5 Poi Dog records were all cassette albums. We used to play on the street in Honolulu all the time just for fun, and beer money. And then we ended up deciding to travel across the states, playing as buskers on the street to make money and sell the cassettes for gas and bread and coffee money. And that's really how the band started, to be honest. That's how it started.
Now, I understand you learned guitar from your mother?
Yeah. My mother was the guitar player in the family. Like, my father was an astronomer, and really I was born in New Mexico, but and they were there by Los Alamos, close to, where they could, my father was an astronomer, so they could send up the rockets, and the astronomers could piggyback, experiments on there, like, oh, check the light reading on this or whatever it is. And then so we lived in a town that was like population 200. So my mom, it was my dad's work, but she was kind of bored. So she ordered a guitar from the Martin Guitar Company. She ordered her records from the Smithsonian, taught herself how to play. And I grew up listening. We all grew up, my whole family, listening to my mom, like learning all these like Woody Guthrie, Carter family, like Roy Rogers, Johnny Cash songs and shit like that. So I grew up with that, but definitely our mom put the guitar in our hands, and then we moved to Hawaii when I was about 4 years old. So that's like kind of a distant memory for me, but that's where the cast was laid, for my brother and sister are older than me. They both play guitar too. So I grew up listening to the three of them playing. I didn't really play a lot. I was kind of more like just a surfer kid, growing up. But then later on, I got the hook in my mouth.
Did your brother or sister have anything to do with Poi Dog or any of your bands? Have you ever played together?
No. Well, we've done some stuff with, like, my sister was, she was more like a folk. She was into Phil Oakes and things like that. She's like more like a folk. She really loved the folk stuff. My brother loved like the other wave, like John Prine and things like that, like the next wave. And they would all be playing those songs. But my sister and I, we recorded some Richard and Mimi Farina songs together just for fun in the studio. And then my brother, I played drums on some of his stuff. And I just recently, my brother knows how to orchestrate for strings. And I tried to get him to orchestrate my last solo record called Mourning Doves, but he had too many things going on, so he couldn't get to it. But that's going to happen one day. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool. So you guys eventually just came to the States and just traveled around for a while, and then found Austin, Texas.
Yeah, we were kind of we were just thinking we were going to do it for like a year, just rip across the States and maybe go to Europe and then go back home to Hawaii. But we ended up, because it was winter by the time we came, we ended up taking the southern route, and we went through Austin, because there was this tattoo shop in Honolulu called China Sea Tattoo, which is kind of famous because it was Sailor Jerry's old shop. So okay. Sailor Jerry, from the rum and all that. So right. This tattoo artist named Rollo Banks, so his real name is Michael Malone, but he bought Sailor Jerry's shop from Sailor Jerry. Sailor Jerry's more like a World War II tattoo guy. Michael Malone was more like a 60s West Coast art guy. Like, he did rock posters. He did, like rock and roll fanzines and shit like that. Not fanzines, but like say for instance, in Hawaii, you had a magazine called Honolulu Babylon. It was just like, it was pretty raw shit, It was like Zap Comics. It was like that kind of thing. Right. But so Rollo and this guy named Yikes. They were friends together in Hawaii, and Yikes is Michael Corcoran. Also, he's a journalist. Yikes is his pseudonym, but they moved to Austin. So we're going like, yeah, fuck, we're going to go to Austin and go visit those guys, because those guys were like the cool guys. We used to go hang out down in Chinatown in Honolulu, because that's where they had their tattoo shop, Okay. So anyways, that was serendipitously, that's why we wound up in Austin. It was just following those guys' cookie crumbs,
Okay, there was no music traction there or anything?
I didn't know anything about it, but just like, this guy, Michael Corcoran, was going, yeah, you should check out Austin. It's a good music town. And we were like, it was winter. We had already been up in Canada. It was getting cold. We came down and we were like, let's go south. So we went south through Austin. And then we wound up in Austin in December. And it was, even for Austin, it was cold, so we just stayed there for the winter. We're there long enough to go that's a really fucking cool town, really good musicians, a lot of shit like that. We ended up traveling to New York, finishing our trip, but then I ended up getting a record contract. And then I moved back to Austin to record the record. That's how we wound up back there.
How many records did you do in Austin?
2. Yeah, we did 2 EPs and a full length. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. We did 3. We did 2 EPs, which are combined into a record, and then 2 full lengths. Yeah.
And what label was that on?
The first 2 EPs were done on a label called Texas Hotel. They're actually out of California. It's a long story, but I have a long connection with them. I used to sell my cassette albums in their store in California, and that's how I knew them. But so they recorded the first record. Then we got picked up by Sony Columbia, and it was sort of like a Texas Hotel Sony Columbia joint. Like back in those days, it was like,
sure.
If you went to like a major label, it was instant death. Like the indie crowd would just fucking take you out back and shoot you. So even though we had so anyways, we did like this code deal, and also because the Texas Hotel people were my friends, it was like and so we ended up doing this code deal, and that code deal went for like a couple of records, and then we got dropped by Columbia because there was a huge buzz on us, like not to blow smoke up our ass, but there really was. It was like they really thought like we were going to like be the next shit. And so like all the major labels were making pitches. And then of course, like, and we're kind of brats, like we've done everything our own way the whole time. So like, I remember making the contract with like the Sony guys going, I want to make a children's record. I want to do an instrumental record. I want to do it. And we had all this like buying power because like Warner Brothers and, all these people were A&M, all these people were like offering us stuff. So I got it. But the truth is like, they're only going to give you what sells. They're not like in a cultural, in the business of, making culture. They're in the business of selling records, of course. But, we were kind of young and bratty, and I thought that we had it made, so I thought we could do whatever we want. But we ended up getting dropped because we didn't sell enough records, because we did do it. Like my third record, I delivered an instrumental record, and they fucking hated it. They were like, what the fuck is this? And I teamed up with this, this new music composer named Ellen Fullman, has this 100-foot long instrument. We made this, like this great record called Palm Fabric Orchestra, and they like, all the bells went off, at 30 Rock, like they're on, and they fucking flew down their A&R guy and said, like, if you release it, we'll drop you, But, so they ended up dropping us, but they gave us that record. So that was like a nice trade-off. They said,
right,
it's not a good relationship. Let's go. And I was like, we were all happy. So we left.
By that time, you were happy to be out of there, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And then we moved to Chicago, and then we just started our own label, Play Tectonic, and we've had our own label ever since.
Now, question, okay, now I own every Poi Dog Pondering album, CD, whatever you want to call it. Albums to us, CDs to the younger crowd. But I've got them all. Right. I've even got my own custom painted, picking up the, what was it, off the floor?
So you have cutting room floors? You got one of those? Floor
stuff. Yeah, I got one of the hand-painted ones.
That's awesome.
I've got them all. But now when I listen to them, just about every single one is different. How do you describe your music?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I know it's all over the place. The way I think about it is that, I fucking love the Ramones. I just came up, but they were probably, before I was even playing music, I heard the Ramones, and I was just going they blew my mind. Rocket to Russia, that record just like blew my mind. I'm trying to think of who else. New Order, amazing. Like Echo and the Bunnymen. They're very niche-y. They have their fucking sound that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And or Nick Cave, or something like that. They have their sound that they do. And I totally get it. I mean, like, especially with the Ramones, because it's like they're completely like, they're in their world. But really, the way I feel as a musician is that I'm constantly inspired by like African pop music, or like I moved to Chicago and I hear like a Chicago house music, or I go to New Orleans and I hear second line music and I go, wow, that's amazing. So I end up using that. To me, it actually feels more natural as a musician to be eclectic, because you're listening, you're doing so. It feels less. It makes less sense for me for a band to have the same sound forever. It makes more sense for the sound to evolve over time, because we're musicians, we grow, we listen, we're like creating, we're making stuff. And so I don't want to diss any bands that sound the same, but I feel like, like AC/DC, they're mining a certain shaft,
mm-hmm.
or Ramones are mining, and I fucking love that shaft. I don't want to diss it. But I guess when which awful the charge has often been leveled on us that we're too eclectic. I don't know where they're coming from. And my only defense is that, like, you know, we're just listening, we're being inspired, we're creating, we're making, we're moving forward, and, you know, whatever. That's just the kind of band that we are, you know. And we're also like 15 people, so there's a lot of, like, you know, there's a lot of influence.
I was going to say there's a lot of people on stage, yes.
Yeah.
So you could kind of say, like, whatever was influencing you at the time for that album, that's what the album's going to be like. That's
totally the key. I mean, that is exactly right. And a lot of times we will be, you know, like making a record, and we'll start out and we'll have an idea, like it's going to be this kind of record. And then halfway through the record, we can feel it veering like this other way, because, you know, all these songs are going this way, and you just have to go with it, you know?
Well, I also noticed you've got a number of songs on the same songs on different albums.
Yeah.
But they're different.
Yeah.
Each song is played differently on each album. And it seems like sometimes it improves. Sometimes it's okay. You know, I like an earlier version or something, or like you did. I can never pronounce it.
Tabou Chez Tabou.
Yeah, Tabou Chez Tabou. I can never pronounce that. You did that in French. You do that in, you know, I heard the French version. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was the original. Like back in Hawaii, like back before we even left, I met this French kid at, you know, a club in Hawaii, and he was traveling, and he was like, you know, he didn't have a place to stay, and I asked my dad, hey, can this guy stay at our house? You know, so this guy stayed at the house, and then we ended up like writing Tabou Chez Tabou together. And then he was part of the original formation. He was a photographer, really, but he also wrote and sang. And then so we formed the first version of the band that would go out on the road and travel. And he was on the road with us, you know. But he got picked up in Arizona for, like, you know, overstanding his visa, you know. He went through his random immigration checkpoints and got nabbed, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, he got, like, non-forcibly. Basically, my dad had to put up $10,000 so that way he would leave the country in time. He didn't get ejected, but they said, like, you know, my dad put up $10,000 so he could finish the trip with us 2 months, and then he had to go back. And then my dad got the $10,000 back, but it was basically like, what do you call it? Getting kicked out of the country, you know?
Deported.
He got deported, yeah, but like in a gentle way, you know. Mm-hmm. They put on the slippers to kick him out.
Right.
So I was never able to record the song with him doing it in French. So he helped me translate to English. So for Volo Volo version, I sang it in English.
Right.
But I was bothered that it wasn't done correctly, you know. And he's had a 10-year. He couldn't come in the country for 10 years. You know, they boom. So I asked around town, and I recorded it with 2 different people, and that's the version that you heard, the French version. Yeah.
Right.
It was like kind of bringing it home, like that's the way it was supposed to be, you know.
Right. I mean, it gives it a whole new sound, a whole new feel to it. It's crazy. It's really a good song. Really good song.
Thank you. I love it too. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So when you guys finally ended up in Chicago, that was about 92.
Yeah.
Was there a reason you came to Chicago? Was it because of the music, like you said? Was it?
Yeah. I mean, we were touring from 88 to 92. We were touring hard. You know, we had 2 vans with pulling a trailer, no seats in the back, just beds. It was like everybody laying down like sardines. And we toured the States like that for a long run. And we'd always go through Chicago, and we'd play at Lounge Acts, you know, or we'd play at Cubby Bear back in the day when the gals from Lounge Acts, Sue and Julia, used to be like, they were like the buyers for Cubby Bear. That's how we met them. And then, you know, so we played there one time. Then they started, you know, and then we met Joe Shanahan from the Metro. And then we just like, you know, and we just like, you know, Chicago is just a real nice town to us, you know. And then at the end of the Volo Volo tour, Columbia dropped us, and we've been touring for a really long time. There was this feeling of like kind of a little bit of a washed out feeling in the band. Like everyone thought something was going to blow up. You know, even the label thought it was going to blow up, and it never blew up. It never blew up. So when the label dropped us, there was just this moment of like, all right, let's take a pause. Some people went off to do their own thing. Actually, everybody just kind of went off to do their own thing. And Max and I just looked at each other and said, let's go to Chicago. Actually, I don't know who said it first, but one of us said it. We're like, that sounds great. I'll do it. Let's do it. So Max and I drove up together in a little box truck. And I was friends with Bridget Murphy, who has Millie's Orchid Show at the time, which is kind of like a performance art, beautiful orchid show. I mean, like, you know, like Blue Man used to play there, you know, David Sedaris, all these people, very interesting. They would have knife throwers and flame twirlers and poets and musicians and all shit. It was like a variety show, like, but in a performance art context. Anyways, through her, I met like a really beautiful part of Chicago, you know, like Mark Smith from the slam poetry stuff from Green Mill. And you know, I met all these icons, you know, like, Tony Fitzpatrick. I met all these people through her. So also in Chicago was like kind of like a, you know, it turned out to be just a beautiful move for us. You know, I mean, it's like a vibrantly creative city where you can afford to live. It's a working city. People they roll up their sleeves and get down to work, you know, like, you know, and so it turned out to be a great move. And personally, I actually really always wanted to live in a big city, you know, like coming from Hawaii, you know, or coming from New Mexico, you know, originally, but, you know, and then Hawaii is like kind of like, I always wanted to experience like a big city. So, you know, it was nice to come to Chicago and feel that big city feel. Now,
Throughout the history of the band, you've gone through a lot of different people. There's been a lot of people that have played. I mean, you're the only constant, correct? I mean, I saw that Ted Cho was with you in Hawaii, and he's here again. There's a little time where he wasn't with you, but it seems like Ted followed you here. But besides him, you're it, right?
I mean, I started it in 84 rather, and then I put a band around it in 86, and Ted was a part of that one, and so was John Nelson, our percussion player. And then we came over, and like both of those guys kind of come and go, like, you know, like they're kind of like, you know, like sometimes John, like we were in San Francisco and John was like, I'm going to stay for a while. And then we, you know, so we continued on to Austin. And then when Max and I moved up here, you know, we asked Ted to come with us, but Ted was like, no, I'm going to hang out, you know, in Austin for a little while. And yes, it's absolutely true that there's been so many people that have come through Poi Dog, but what is really astounding to me is that, like, if I go through the roll call, you know, it's like, John's been there since he's been like 33 years. Ted's been there 33 years. Max and Susan have been there for like 30 years. Cornell been there for like 28 years. The youngest, you know, everybody's been there, like Doug, 28 years, you know, and then the person who's been in the band the least amount of time is our drummer, Ryan, but he was our drum tech for 15 years and he's been a drummer for 5 years. So really it's like, you know, sometimes people go like, oh, the band's like totally different. I was like, well, no, actually not. You know, but there is this like movement, you know, like what, you know, some of the band members joke, they go like, nobody ever quits Poi Dog forever.
Right. Well, it wasn't until you came to Chicago that you finally added like the horn section and all. That's when you basically became an orchestra. Yeah,
you know, there's a couple things that happened when we came up here. Like before we came here, I heard Nick Drake's Brighter Later, you know, that album Brighter Later by Nick Drake, which blew my mind, like the orchestration stuff on it, and mostly the strings, you know, stuff like that. And then when we got to Chicago, I heard Tyrone Davis. So Tyrone Davis's stuff from the 60s, from the 70s and stuff like that had that great horn stuff. And we already had these elements. Like Susan was already playing, you know, violin, Max was already playing trumpet. But then we went after that sound and we met this guy, Paul Mertens, who was, you know, he played clarinet and saxophone. And then we met this string section called Parallax String Section. And we worked with them a lot on the first record, like on Pomegranate, things like that. Then really, like, at that point, we really opened this door. Paul Mertens and Susan Bells and Max Crawford really walked in that door, and then they embraced the arranging thing very much. You know, they took the baton and ran with it, and it's just like their shit has been really beautiful. You know, I'm really proud of their work on the orchestration stuff. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, a number of the people in the band have their own music out too. I mean, Susan's got CDs out. A lot of people. Well, Amber Moore.
Yeah.
She had a great career after Poi Dog.
She keeps sending me. We communicate all. Amber's like my fucking soul sister. You know, we go back all the way to Hawaii. She's one of the original members. You know,
right.
But she left really early on, like before we even before we finished the first record. She was out. But, you know, like creatively, we're bound like at the hip, you know. But she's always sending me stuff. Like she's been playing drums lately. So now her songs are like become something else because she's on the drums. So it's like all this funky, trashy, rocky stuff, you know. Like before she used to be acoustic guitar. And it's just beautiful to watch her like kind of explore all the shit, you know.
So tell us a little bit about some of the other bands you're involved with, some of the other groups.
And I play drums with Thievery Corporation, right?
Yeah, about 20 years ago, I got a random call out of the blue. Actually, my manager Chaka got a call, and they were like, oh, yeah, we're wondering if Frank would be interested in playing percussion with Thievery. And Chaka was like, you mean Letty, who was our percussion player at the time? She's like, you must mean Letty. And they go, no, we're Frank. And it's because Rob Garza, one of the main, there's two guys in Thievery really. That's there, you know. And so one of the main guys, Rob Garza, when he was a young man, he used to travel around with Poi Dog cassettes around Mexico, like when he was traveling there. So he had an affiliation with that, and I ended up getting. I was so proud to get that call because I grew up as a drummer, and but I've been moving over to guitar for all that time. So it was so nice to be in somebody else's band and play percussion for somebody and be a band member rather than a band leader. And also I was a fan of their music already. So I was just like, wow. So yeah, it was a beautiful kind of like a thing for me to play percussion for those guys. And, you know, we did that for 20 years, still going now, but they're taking a break for this year, obviously. But yeah, it's been really fun to be that, you know, that's my opportunity to be a band member, which I feel like, you know, it's kind of like for me being a band leader, I feel like I know what a band leader needs out of their band member. So I love being a good soldier. You know, it's just really show up on time, make sure you know your songs, have a positive attitude, and I love, it's almost like a monk activity for me, to be honest. You know, I love to do that.
So how are you surviving right now with the whole COVID-19 thing?
Yeah, I mean, I started out right out of the bag with kind of like a very proactive attitude. I thought like, all right, I'll get a little ring light. I'll get a tripod. I'll get I'll get something so where I can fucking do some home, home projection stuff, and do things like that. And I tried, and then my neighbors were complaining because I was playing music at 8:00 at night, and it was like, it was fun. I enjoyed doing it, and I'll probably still do it, but I also like, this is not really going to happen. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to focus on some other stuff. And I also cook for a living too. Like how I make my living is I play with Thievery, or I play with Poi Dog, and I cook for people in their homes. I couldn't survive without one of them.
I was going to ask you about Chef Frank.
Yeah. So all three of them kind of like triangulate together, but all three of those are out the window now. So I was like okay, maybe I'll do some guitar lessons at home, or maybe I'll do some things. Yeah, it wasn't really working. So what I've been doing really is like, I just decided I'm going to sell my place here in Chicago. I'm going to be more of a gypsy. I have some friends who live in different places. I'm going to stay with them, and I'm going to write and record a new record. And me and the Poi Dogs can record virtually or in small groups very easily together. My guitar player Ted's going to come over on Friday night, and we're going to like work through some stuff and have some dinner and catch up. But not everybody in Poi Dog wants to be, they're careful about being in the same room, so like that. We're trying to like be careful about social distancing and everything like that. So I've just been writing it out by like selling my stuff, selling my apartment, going a little bit more gypsy, hoping that like the shit will like arc over in some place where I can come back and do a show like at some point. So, and I'm okay with that. Like I've actually, most of my life, I've been pretty living out of the suitcase, like that's been pretty much my MO, whether it's been on tour, like I'm pretty happy with my acoustic guitar and my suitcase, my computer and my little recording device,
Well, that's what's great about the technology nowadays is that you can record and send a file to someone else and they can add their part and that's a great thing,
True. Yeah. And it works pretty good for us. We've had good luck with that. Like I'll come up with a song and I'll send it to like Paul or Susan or Max for orchestration. And then they'll just live with it for a while. And they'll send back something and it's like Christmas, that thing arrives in my inbox. Wow. Okay. Well,
I understand you're a collector of some instruments as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love,
and are you selling those as well?
I've kept all my jewels for sure. Yeah. I sold things that I knew. There's, I buy a lot of things, and some of them are tourist instruments. Like I might be in Mexico and I'll buy a little vihuela, which is like a small body guitar, but I realized later on like the intonation is not very good. The things, so whatever. And then, but I can still tune it in such a way to use it so it adds a texture for recording. But now I recognize that's now not a real instrument. It's more like a sonic thing. So, I've kind of, sold those or given those away. But like anything that I recognize as being a solid tool, I'm not selling it. Yeah.
So your dinner shows as Chef Frank, you do it all, right? It's you buy the food, you make the menu, you buy the food, you do it all.
Yeah, I start early in the day. I go shopping, and then I show up at the house early in the day, like in the early afternoon. Cook so that way I'm prepped when the people get there, and then I serve dinner, and then I play music later on. And it all kind of comes out of like when I was a kid and we were in our New Mexican town where like it was only population 200. So like my mom would play guitar after dinner. Like there'd be like 2 families over for dinner, and the guitar would always come out. I loved that as a kid. It was like like hearing all those Roy Rogers songs and just like so for me it was never about a performance. It was about for the Chef Night things. It was like. It's not like okay. Sometimes people would set up like a bar stool for me and be like, no, it's not like that. We're going to sit in the couch, or we're going to sit at the table and we're just going to drink and I'm going to play some songs and we're going to talk story, so yeah, it's kind of like trying to recapture that thing.
What about some of the other side projects?
I come up with these monikers, because Poi Dog's pretty eclectic musically, and sometimes it gets too eclectic musically. So I've sort of made this decision to come up with these different monikers that I can record or aliases that I can record these different things. So I have like kind of more like all my electronic stuff I put through a thing called 8 Fat 8. I have all my sort of South American Brazilian stuff I put through something called Mourning Doves. And then I have kind of like a thing that I do with Abram Moore and Mariko Usui. There's a more like kind of like Cocteau Twins-ish that's called Soft Explosion. So I just kind of put these, this music through these things. So that way, if people are into this thing, they don't have to weed through the whole Poi Dog catalog to get to it. They can go right to that thing.
You've got a new album CD out now, don't you? Just came out.
Yeah. I have 2. One is Mourning Doves, which is the debut for this thing, which is basically like I've been carrying the acoustic guitar around with Thievery on tour and then being around all this bossa nova and bolero, Mexican bolero stuff, Brazilian bossa nova. So it has a lot of that quality to it. And then I just released all my first cassette albums from when I first started in Hawaii. There was 5 cassette albums, and I released those just about a month ago, something like that.
Which are very good from firsthand experience.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you heard them?
I got them.
I'm so glad.
I got them. Very good. Again, some songs I've heard of before, and in a different way.
That was what like when I got the record contract with Texas Hotel and we moved to Austin to start recording. that made it so, most bands suffer the sophomore slump,
Mm-hmm.
like we had like 5 cassette albums worth of material. So even though we were touring, we could still like cherry pick songs out of those things and record them. So we were able to come up with like the second record easy,
Right. Do you do most of the writing for the band now, or?
Yeah, I always have. Like I do it like kind of like I sort of look at it like I write the skeleton, and and the band puts like the muscle and the meat and the flesh on it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I for the most part, I also team up with people. We never really just sit down and jam and write a song because it's too much. It's too chaotic. But really good in 1 or 2, 3 people at a time, clusters. Oftentimes I will send people like here's an idea or a whole bunch of ideas on a cassette or on a CD or now on a file. And then I just say, if anyone hears anything, let me know. So sometimes some of the singers will come back with some lyric ideas, or somebody who's in the arranging mode will come back with some arranging mode ideas, and then I'll just blend those together.
Tell me about a little stint you had in LA with a movie called Breakin'.
Yeah. I was still living in Hawaii, and I was like, I came over to LA to play music. I remember trying out for different bands over there and playing with different bands, and that was around the time of like Wall of Voodoo and stuff like that. They were playing, at the Whiskey A Go-Go and shit like that. But I really couldn't make anything happen. I had a friend of mine from Hawaii also who worked in films. And he said, I can get you a job as like a runner on these films. So like, I would be going out buying batteries and, and then I kind of worked my, the way that work is that it's seasonal. Like you work on a film for like 2 months or whatever, but you start to know the crew people, you start to know the art department people, you start to know the production people. And so you start getting people go like, hey, we're going to start this film. You want to come over and be like, an assistant on this thing or an assistant on that thing. It's kind of like a stepping stone workway. So I ended up like getting invited. I worked on a lot of films that have never seen the light of a projector, a lot of bad films. And then I got called in on Breakin', and I was like assistant to the assistant of the prop director. But I was in it was the 3 of us that did all of we dressed the sets, we did all the stuff. So I mean, I ended up doing like a lot of the graffiti for that film, even though I knew nothing about graffiti. I had to learn it, I had to watch it. But I had, I was a painter before in Hawaii, like art school and stuff like that. So I kind of pulled it up. But yeah, it was super fun. It was. I felt like I got to see LA. Like that club that was in the movie Breakin' that they called Radiotron. I forget what it was really called. I think it was just called the Radio in LA. But I mean, man, it was exciting. As for a little Hawaii kid, and I go there, and also I see his kids in like nylon windbreakers with the hoods up, and doing windmills on the floor. And I was just like, it was pretty fucking amazing. Yeah.
So you said you were in art school. Did you want to be an artist at one time, or?
Yeah. I paint, a little bit, and I definitely did want to be a painter at one point. And I wasn't really in art school, but like at Kapiolani Community College, because I wasn't smart enough to get into UH, so I went to Kapiolani Community College first, and I took drawing and painting, which was super fun because it was super cheap, and you could, I didn't have to worry about it. Actually, I'm going to tell you a very funny story because like. That was like kind of, I was worried about my dad paying, for school and stuff like that. I was like, shit, but I went to Kapiolani Community College, and then I went to UH, and then I took all the prerequisites. My dad's an academic, he's an astronomer. So he's like, you got to take, economics, you have to take world history, you have to do it. That's your first. Later on, you can get to your secondary courses,
Right.
So for 2 semesters, I took all the stuff and I hated it. And then, so for my next semester, I only took the courses I really want, which is like drawing and painting and short story and prose.
Right.
And I fucking loved it. I could have done that shit forever. But like, that was, but the irony is that, back in those days, University of Hawaii for a resident, $250 a semester.
Oh,
wow. Wow.
Incredible.
Incredible.
I feel bad for like, kids now, you got to fucking, pay out the nose just to gamble on your education, you know.
Right. But you,
Yeah,
what
I know. I've
you learned,
got two of them going now. So.
what you learned in that year you were there with the art and writing and stuff, that's carried on through your whole career.
You know, Collarbone. You know, I wrote that. You know, after being in my short story and prose class, or like down, In Comes the Night, which is off our last proper studio record called I forget what it's called now. Everybody's Got a Star. That shit was written in my University of Hawaii short story and prose class. You know, it was just a poem. You know, yeah.
So speaking of your songs, do you have any favorites?
You know, it changes all the time. Like sometimes people, you know, like they rotate around. But it would be easy for me to pull a few favorites. You know, like
Is there something that you always want in a set list?
Yeah. Pulling Touch is one of the songs that I always want to set list. It's off of the first EP.
You are a butterfly in my eyes are needles. The cold has your breast and my hand is on fire. Are you resting and reposing? Oh, my veins are pulsing, and nothing can cure me but your pulling touch, and nothing can cure me but your.
And to me, it's kind of like I think it holds the DNA of Poi Dog in a certain way in my mind. You know, what I think of Poi Dog, it holds the DNA, which is kind of a new order based melody structure, a little bit of like it's, you know, awe, but yet a little bit of melancholy. Those are things I think we're sometimes given the short shrift as being a bright band, but I think there's a lot of like, you know, there's other things going on in there in the music. I also really love Bury Me Deep, or Everybody's Trying, or Collarbone, Catacombs, Big Constellation, In Comes the Night, All Around. Yeah, this, you know, I mean, like, and it rotates around. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll just like, you know, I haven't played Big Beautiful Spoon, which is like kind of a country song off of our second record.
Sometimes I live in the past. I know that it's true. I'm romantic to melancholy. You know that's true too. The past is a shoebox of old songs and photographs. I dig in and wade through.
And I just like, when I played it the other day, I was like, oh, I love this song. It's cute. You know, it's like, you know, weird. You kind of forget about some of the songs for a while, and we can't do all of them now. Like, you know, it's like, there's like you sort of realize, I love to mulch the set list, you know, like bring in surprises, you know, because we're really like our following is more like a cult following. It's very much a cult following. You know, there's people there's no, you know, it's rare that anyone new comes in unless they were birthed into a family of like old Poi Dogs, you know. So for me, it's like I recognize I'm playing to like Poi Dog people who have loved the band for a long time. So I do really enjoy pulling in unusual songs that, you know, we haven't done in a long time, and knowing that, you know, a few deep fans are going to be like, holy shit, I can't believe they played that song. I like that feeling. You know, it's like kind of like a feeling that I love it, you know. I've gone to enough shows in my life where like I've watched an artist not play anything from like a certain whole decade, you know, of their stuff. And that makes me crazy. So I'm really careful about trying to make sure that we touch on each of the records, and we, you know, like through the course of the record. So everybody feels like, you know, they heard something from a certain record, because people are very era oriented with this band.
Oh yeah.
There's some band, you know, some people who hate the more dancey stuff that I was drawn to later, and there's some people that just don't relate to the more kind of like folky or world aspect or rock and roll stuff that was earlier on. So it's like, you know, it's like, but I know that they do like the eclecticism of the band. So I definitely, when we're making the set list, we're trying to, you know, fan that out.
Yeah, trying to get a good set list together. It's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. It's all right.
It's all right. It is. No, it's you really I myself, I like all of it. I like the dance music. I like the rock. I like the folkiness. It's great stuff. That's what Poi Dog is. That's what I like about the band myself.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We love having that latitude, to like just be able to like kind of explore and, it's interesting watching even like the band members, folks like, like different people like, who like maybe like Cornell, who like never listened to, maybe so all of a sudden there's songs that he loves from the early catalog that I'm surprised that he likes because he's more like a Temptations guy.
Right.
He loves the Temptations, And then we got, Ted, who's like a total rock and roll. He loves Tom Verlaine, television, stuff like that. And then there's other times where he'll love like something else that's going on, like,
right.
In the more dancey side. So it's interesting to watch all that dance go on.
So where can people find Poi Dog and Frank Orrall?
Yeah. I mean, we're, sonically, we have our website, which any one of our identities, like whether it be Poi Dog or Palm Fabric or Mourning Doves and all that stuff, they have their own addresses. So you go .com and it'll lead you to our label, which is called Play Tectonic Music. And then we're also on like Spotify and Amazon and Apple Music and stuff like that.
Okay. And
we're not distributed by any, like we don't have any physical distribution. I mail everything out of the house here,
Okay. So all your, CDs and stuff are available on the website?
Yeah, on our website.
We can purchase them there.
Yeah, vinyl and CD. Yeah.
Excellent. Is the new album going to be in vinyl?
It's not. The new album, which is the collection of the old cassette stuff,
mm-hmm.
is just going to be available on CD and digital.
Okay.
The last record that I released, which is Mourning Doves, I may release it on vinyl. If we can afford it at some point. I really do want to. I want to make a double pack with it, but we'll see if I can afford to or not.
All righty, Frank. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
It was kind of you guys to invite me. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
It was a ball. There's a ball getting the backstory of you and Poi Dog.
All right.
Yes, it was fine. Very interesting stuff.
Thanks, fellas. I appreciate it.
Okay, hopefully we'll see you out and about soon playing again.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Take care. Good night.
Take care. So that was Frank Orrall from Poi Dog Pondering, also from
Thievery Corporation,
Thievery Corporation. Right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, he's involved in quite a few endeavors, including Chef Frank.
Chef Frank. That's right.
Well, that's what it says online. It says Chef Frank, but which I would recommend people try that out. I want to do it myself. I want to have him out at the house, have him cook for us, play a little music.
Sure.
Have a few cocktails. Maybe we'll do a live podcast.
Sure. There you go.
Yeah. So that was a great talk with Frank.
Yeah. Very interesting guy.
Yeah. A lot of backstory all the way from somewhere in the middle of the Pacific to the Midwest in Chicago.
Yes, indeed.
Quite a circuitous route.
Yes, he did take that, didn't he?
Yes, he did. I mean, he once they got to Chicago, they seemed to really hit it off well, and they're still sounding great. Their new album's out, and that sounds great. And hopefully there'll be something new coming out. As Frank said, he's going to work on something while he's going to his little gypsy phase right now.
All righty. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you soon. We'll talk to you soon. And
don't forget to listen to us every Monday on the Road to Rock Radio from the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66. Check us out at 6 p.m. every Monday night on roadtorock.net.
Okay, I'll do so.
Please do.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks. See you next week.
Bye.
Road to Rock Radio is proud to welcome Paul Martin of M&R Rush and the Dancing Noodles and Ray the Roadie, the Rock and Roll Chicago Podcast. Join Paul and Ray as they bring you weekly interviews from bands that have rocked Chicago. It's the Rock and Roll Chicago Podcast, Monday night at 6 on Road to Rock Radio.
Rock and Roll Chicago Podcast does not own the rights to any of the music that's played on this podcast.
The music is used to promote the band or musicians that are interviewed.
Chicago.